Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican out of Utah, who about a year ago said, I'm not too sure this massive health care bill is constitutional. And it turns out, Senator, at least 2 judges have said you're absolutely right. Senator, welcome back.
Well, it's nice to be with you, Brian. I appreciate what you do and the intelligent way you discuss matters.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, Senator, the massive health care gets passed. It's something that you and Senator Kennedy have been working on as long as you've been been functioning as a legislator. What made you think to yourself, this doesn't sound like it's constitutional?
Well, not only does it not sound like it, it isn't in Constitution. This is the first time in history that the federal government is going to force you to absolutely buy something that you don't want to buy, especially when it's what you call enforcing an inactivity. In other words, your refusal to buy health insurance. If they can do that to you, they can take away all your liberties and make you do anything Congress wants to do. This is an unconstitutional $2.6 trillion health care bill. It needs to be struck down. It destroys jobs. It increases health costs. It raises taxes. It threatens liberty, all in the name of one of the greatest expansions of federal power in our nation's history, 1/6 of the American economy. And when Judge Vinson made clear this week in his decision, he made it very clear that the Congress does not have the legal authority to tell the American people that they must buy health insurance or anything else for that matter.
What happens to the plan if that element is tossed out? If that's declared unconstitutional, how does that affect Obamacare?
Well, that and the job-killing employer mandate, in other words, the unconstitutional individual mandate and the job-killing employer mandate, if they're knocked out, the financing for that awful health care bill goes down as well. And frankly, I think even if the individual mandate is knocked out, it would go down because, they're saying because some people don't have insurance, you've got to make everybody buy insurance, and it's just something they've used on this bill, every budget gimmick, every parliamentary trick in the book. And, the American people are calling on us to repeal it, and I don't think they're going to be happy till we get it repealed.
Senator Hatch, we're in a situation where I think Democrats went from dancing in the aisle to feeling like they're going down in history as one of the greatest Congresses and legislators in the history of man, to now almost embarrassed by what this plan has done, the danger it's in, and what's actually in the 2,000 pages. Behind the scenes, have Democrats approached you about a way out?
Well, they're saying that, there are lots of things we can do to improve the bill. Well, why didn't they talk to us back then? They just did a totally partisan bill here in both the House and the Senate in an arrogant fashion because they had enough votes. Judge Vinson's decision in Florida, that affirms that the Constitution is not in the eye of the congressional beholder. It sets real limits on federal power, and he's 100% right that the individual insurance mandate, where the government forces people to buy insurance whether they want it or not, is inextricably bound to the rest of the law, and therefore the whole law is unconstitutional. So, if Congress had taken the Constitution seriously 2 years ago, and I've got to say, you should hear the main witnesses for the Democrats that we're just hearing right now in the Judiciary Committee. They're justifying anything. Congress can do anything they want to you, although they all admit this is a case of first impression, never been done before, and they're trying to compare it to Social Security.
I got so much to talk to you about, but we had 2 of the people that testified in front of, I believe, your committee last week joined us. A man that owns 12 IHOP restaurants, another one who owns a family-run printing store of 45 people, and he just gave us a real-world expression and conclusion about what healthcare means to him in terms of how he cannot afford to insure people. He's going to have to absorb the penalties. He's got to now budget in $2,000 per person because he cannot afford to insure a bunch of waiters that are working 30 hours that he never promised insurance to before. That means he can't go ahead and buy another restaurant. And the other guy doesn't want to. He says, I need more people, but I'm not going to go over the 50-person threshold because I know what that's going to mean under Obamacare. Are any Democrats hearing this, or are they so stubborn they're just unwilling to back off?
Oh, they don't care. I mean, they have the attitude that we should be able to tax people all we want to. We should be able to make them do what we want to. The almighty federal government should be supreme in every way, that the states really are insignificant. I mean, this is the attitude that they have around here. Now, will they express it exactly that way? Probably not, because the American people can't stand those type of thoughts, but yet that's what they stand for. I think the American people are waking up. And
right.
The independents have certainly awakened that, in going along with these far left liberals, they've enabled them to do things that are going to wreck this country if we don't get it turned around. So, I'm very concerned. You hear these guys. I've just been in this hearing on it, and the left will justify any governmental action, no matter what, and you should hear it. I mean, it's just incredible to me. Now we've got flaws on the right, too, from time to time, but not in this instance, as far as I'm concerned.
Senator Orrin Hatch is our guest, Republican of Utah, who's up for election. And, Senator, what are you going to do to avoid becoming, I guess, a victim of the Tea Party and their momentum and money like Bob Bennett was?
Well, keep in mind, I'm a different person than Senator Bennett. He is a fine man. He should have been reelected, but I started working with the Tea Party people long before Senator Bennett even thought there was a problem, because I recognize these are sincere, dedicated, honest people who are sick and tired of what's happening in this country and in this government. They see us that the national debt now is 65% of GDP. And according to Obama's own actuary, in 9 years, it'll be 90% of GDP, which means we won't be the strongest country in the world anymore. And they see this type of stuff. They see the national debt doubling in 5 years and tripling in 10, according to the Obama budgeteers. And they know that can't be sustained. They see a federal government out of control. They see, the liberal point of view taking over in such a way that it's going to wreck our country. And they're starting to wake up out there. And so I've met with them right from the beginning. They suggested I hold town hall meetings. Well, I've always done that, but I've held 7 major town hall meetings in the last 6-7 months, and I've got to say that usually in the past, if we'd get 50 people to show up after notifying the whole community, we'd have a good town hall meeting. Mine have averaged 500 to 700.
Wow.
I think that's great, because they're upset, they're up in arms, they want to stand up for their country, and I think that's great. They've been intense meetings. I've stood in each one of them for at least 3 hours and answered questions, and I was just as hopped up at the end as I was at the beginning, because these type of things are, when you can get with the American people and really listen to them and take their criticisms and their suggestions, I think that's what people in politics really ought to be doing, and I'm doing it.
And your energy and the way you're on top of all these major issues is laudable, and I think both sides realize that. I want you to hear what Senator Lindsey Graham told me yesterday, and tell me if you're on board with this. Let's listen.
If they were smart at the White House, they would have a health care summit, get everybody in the country involved, not just the politicians, but private sector people, do a commission, see if it could report something to the Congress that was more balanced.
How about a commission? Would you be open to that?
Well, I'm getting sick and tired of commissions, but
So am I, by the way.
I'm certainly open to it, but I think we are. Look, we were elected to solve these problems. I think if the administration, I offered to help the administration, and a lot of health care bills that work in this country have my name on them, and they know it, and they knew it then, and they invited me down to see them. When push came to shove, they didn't listen to any Republican. They had massive majorities in the House and in the Senate, and as you can see, by a totally partisan vote, they passed this Obamacare. And now, have you heard all these Democrats saying, well, yeah, there are things that can be fixed. There are things that are wrong with it. There are things that we wish we had changed. Well, why didn't we do it then? The reason we didn't, because there was no bipartisanship at all. It was strictly partisan. And, I think the American people are sick and tired of that.
Well, I just want to ask you, you've been down so many roads before, so many different pieces of legislation. You've been in power, you've been the majority, you've been the minority, you've had massive, not as big as the Democrats have, but you've had other advantages. Let me ask, where are we heading with this? Are we just going to let this go to the Supreme Court? Or do you think the president willing to risk something that he's going to define himself on in the next election and maybe forever? Where are we heading?
I think he is willing to risk it, because he figures that there'll be at least five justices on the court.
But he could be. It's too much of a risk, don't you think?
Well, I do. It's not too late to fix this. We can and we should repeal this law and start
Repeal
over.
it, though. You're going to stick with repeal, Senator?
We should repeal it and then start over on real reform that actually reduces health costs without the heavy-handed government. This bill's going to cause health costs to go off the charts, and I know there's a method in their madness. You notice they put off the real costs of this bill to 2014. First of all, they did that so that they could argue that it was only $1 trillion when we all know it's at least $2.6 trillion. So they played that gimmick, and then of course they know it's not going to work. And about 2013, they're going to throw if Obama is reelected, I can almost guarantee this, they're going to throw their hands in the air and say, oh, this is not going to work. We've got to go to a single-payer system. In other words, socialized medicine, where the almighty federal government in Washington, D.C. runs everything for everybody. And that's what they're after. That's what they believe. I mean, they sincerely believe that.
Right.
And we can't let them get away with that. This country's gone if we do that.
Well, Senator, before I let you go, I just got to ask you, can you lead us in an area we're probably not experienced enough to know? Is anything short of repeal possible amongst your leadership? Would they stop short of anything short of appeal? Would they be into a last-minute fix where tort reform is put in, be able to buy insurance across state lines put in, the 1099 fix? Can you see both sides going legitimately into a negotiation, almost like a collective bargaining situation where there's a strike looming at midnight?
Are you kidding? The White House isn't going to budge on this. They think they can win on this and subject the American people to the federal government in all ways. And frankly, I think anything short of repeal means that they'll just argue every little jot and tittle of this bill that doesn't work, and it'll be very, very difficult to make it into something. I don't think you can make it into something that's really good. So my attitude is the American people have spoken in this last election. Yeah, we didn't get control of the Senate, but we got more votes. And if the Democrats are really smart, they'd sit down with some of us who've worked on health care all our lives and who know how to do it and put it in a perspective where the American taxpayers can afford it, and where it will really work in a way that benefits virtually everybody, and we could get that done. But I don't see it because they think they have an advantage. They do right now. I mean, and it was a totally partisan advantage. I've said over and over, if you have a piece of legislation that affects 1/6 of the American economy, and you pass it by a totally partisan vote, you know it's a lousy piece of legislation. And the American people inherently know that now. And they're mad as hell, and they ought to be. I'm telling you, it's one of the reasons the House has been taken over. We've got to not only take over the Senate, but get me a fiscal conservative majority of 60. And I'll tell you, we'll straighten out every doggone problem we've got in this country.
Senator Orrin Hatch, that's his request. America, make it happen. Senator, thanks so much.
Well, great to be with you, Brian. Keep up the good work.